Kia ora and welcome to Riftbound, the series aimed at teaching you how to play the game step by step, getting you confident enough to play your first Nexus night. Now for today we are going to be taking a quick detour over towards Vendetta as a pre-release review of how the game works, and visiting some new mechanics. Obviously, there are going to be a large number of new cards, so this will be a slower play of the game. I'll be talking about the cards. I might even give some of my own personal opinion on how the cards might look in the new set. But the main ones we are looking to cover for today will be the new tags Flow, Empower, and there is one more I'm forgetting, but we'll get there. But there is a lot also of Banish that is being reintroduced. Sorry, I finally remembered the last one. Burn. But Banish is making a lot more of a statement in this set than it was in previous iterations. Now, obviously, in Origins, you have Time Warp, which banishes itself. You have from Spirit Forge items such as no, Curse Sarcophagus is in fact Unleashed. Unleashed had a few banish options as well. Oh, sorry, D0 Drive? Z0 Drive? Zero Drive? Spirit Forge, Zero Drive, which saw not much play, but it banished things. Banish is going to be a much larger thing in Vendetta, as well as they've clarified some things regarding floating. Nothing of importance, they've just noted that it exists, I believe. But without further ado, let us move over to the spectator's view of a game between Mel, Soul's Reflection. Her legend ability is when you empower something else, empower me. I become empowered if I'm not already. Empower is a state of either yes or no, on or off. You stay on until you turn off. There is no other things about it. And she has the legend ability of Disempower Me and Exhaust Me, give a unit at a battlefield -2 this turn. Now it is important to note that that is not to give an enemy unit -2 this turn, it is give any unit a -2 this turn, so cards such as Gust, you can -2 your own unit and then Gust your own card back to hand. That is a viable option. Now her chosen champion for the game is Mel, Newly Awakened. If you have watched Arcane, you'll know who Mel is. If you've played League of Legends, you'll know who Mel is. But she is very much fitting the criteria of a mage in this circumstance, and her ability is, when you play me, draw 1. And you can empower her for 3 energy, and it can only be used if she is not empowered. And empowered is, your spells and abilities can't be countered. If a spell or ability you control would give -might this turn, minus might to a unit it chooses, give it an additional -1. In other words, really, really strong, and this card in particular, I imagine, is going to be exceptionally well hunted and played in blue decks. For Jin, she is going to be phenomenal because it means you cannot counter any of his spells, which means you can always guarantee they're going to be played. Now, it obviously says that your spells and abilities can't be countered when she's empowered, which means if there are ways to empower or disempower her as the opponent, then you're in a bit of luck. But as far as I've looked through the set, there's not many things that can disempower other cards, so we'll see how it goes. Now, on the other side, we are playing our first ever red-green. Now, I think in my first video I talked about there's some pairings. Red is aggressive, while green is calm, and this is the first iteration of a unit which has both. There is also in this set a blue-orange, which is Jace, and a yellow-purple, which is Kennen. Those 3 are the first of their types in a series of cards which choose to cross those borders we haven't seen before. She has the ability of Empower for 3 and 1 power, 3 energy, 1 power. Action, exhaust her. If it's your turn, move a friendly unit in a showdown to base, and if I'm empowered, ready it. It is really worth noting here that while it is an action and therefore can be done on the opponent's turn, it specifies here that no, it has to be your turn. I know it says action, too bad. But it means that during a showdown, if you feel like you're kind of starting to lose the showdown, you can back out, and it's not the end of the world. And that can be done regardless if she is empowered. But if you are empowered, if she is empowered, it just means, hey, bring it back, but get it ready for the next fight. Which, in some circumstances, can be really good. Especially because if you don't have a unit, or if you don't have concerns about winning a battle, you move in, and a move trigger gives you bonus, such as, I'm thinking Stellar Corn Herder, when I move, draw one, you can use this in order to move a Stellar Corn Herder in, and then use Akali on action speed to just bring him out. And if she's empowered, ready. And then you've got a draw 2 just for essentially exhausting your legend ability. Now, it is also worth noting that because it says move and not recall, technically move triggers are things that can exhaust or otherwise hire the unit. But because it is another card moving it, it wouldn't be exhausted otherwise. But this also means that if you have a unit defending in a battlefield and it becomes your turn, it obviously enters ready, you can use this Akali to bring it back readied anyway. So that is also another really interesting thing about that. Anyway, move on to Akali Silent. Now, before I get into it, I've had some people say that this card it is what it is, but it's not the really exciting part of this. She says, I can't be chosen by enemy spells and abilities unless I'm in combat. You know, that's pretty good. That's absolutely really good. When I move to a battlefield, give me +2 this turn. That move trigger is not requiring of attack or defense, it is blatantly just a move. And the first part of it says, I really just want to fight, which plays into the aggressive side of things really well, but also this whole +2 and being able to bring things back, it speaks into the green part of the deck really nicely. Now, I'm going to just do a very quick mulligan. That is the mulligan for the Akali, and the mulligan for Mel will look a little like that. They weren't the best draws, and they got much worse, could have been. So there is only one new card on both players' sides, and only one battlefield worth mentioning right now, and that is Risen Altar. Risen Altar is empower costs of your units here cost 1 energy or power less. Now, if you remember in the previous video when I talked about how strong Israel's optional cost reduction can impact the game, I don't think that this battlefield is going to have nearly the same effect, but it's really nice. It's just kind of lowering the bar for some of these cards where the rest of your cards, you just have a lot of cards you might want to play in a single turn. As for the Akali, the one card in her hand is her signature spell, Shuriken Flip. And there's a few things worth noting here. Firstly, there is that symbol below Shuriken Flip that has the X in the cards, and that is a symbol for when a card has flow. And that is because a flow card, in this case, is a 3 energy, 2 power, that allows you to play that card from trash for the cost of the flow, and then you banish it. Now, banish is when you don't return the card to deck or to trash. It lives in its own pile that you cannot interact with, except for certain circumstances. Jin Virtuoso banishes cards that he chooses to banish that meet his criteria, and therefore he can interact with those when he's ready. Cards like Time Warp banish themselves, and that's it, full stop. Cursed Sarcophagus, when you play, banishes a bunch of cards, and you can draw from that banish pile. So think of banish almost like islands that you can interact with in other ways, and your trash and your main deck live on the main island in the same circumstance. Shuriken Flip, however, has the ability at no speed, so slow speed, deal 2 damage to up to 1 enemy unit at a battlefield, then move a friendly unit. It doesn't say that you have to have a friendly unit move to a location, such as the battlefield. It says just move it. So you could deal 2 damage to a unit at a star spring, and then move your unit from Risen Altar to base. There is no requirement that you interact with the unit you dealt damage to. It just requires 2 things. You have a friendly unit, and you have an enemy unit at a battlefield. Those are the only 2 requirements for you to play this card. It is a 1 energy, 1 mixed power, And to this turn, we are just going to tap these 2 runes on this screen and play out Inferno, which we've seen before, but is the 1 might, but comes 3 might on assault on attack. Now onto the Mel side, we have 1 new card as well, and that is Decree of Insight. This one is truly fascinating. It is the first card that interacts with a specific alternative power or domain. It reads, ignore deflect cost while playing this spell's cost. Give an enemy body unit -5 this turn. In other words, during this matchup, pretty useless. But it is a truly fascinating card when you consider that it's just saying, hey look, body units are massive, and for 1 energy, I can reduce it completely. It is reaction speed, and completely counters punch first. That is, I believe, the crux of this card. It is going to most likely actually end up in the sideboard. This, I'm using some people's decks that they've made, obviously with all the information they have available to them, and they're just kind of testing things, figuring out what works, figuring out what they like. But this is most likely going to be a sideboard card, especially with the update to sideboard. This is something that I was going to mention in the previous video, but I actually felt that it was going to be a bit of a bigger picture. But they have changed the rules regarding sideboard from 8 to 10, which means you can have 10 cards, a quarter of your deck, available to you to just completely swap out. Those extra 2 cards may not sound like a massive thing until you start building decks of your own and you're really sitting there going, wow, I really don't want to make the decision between these 2 cards and these 2 cards, or only running 1 copy of this versus running 2 copies of it, but I don't get to run 1 copy of that. Now you get to run 2 copies of both. Often you will see in a sideboard they will only run 1 copy of certain cards, and it's a really good sign that maybe it's not that important, but maybe they also have to sacrifice certain things just because they have to. And now there's going to be a bit more opportunity for them not to have to do that. But the Mel is going to open with an Eager Apprentice, which says, while I'm at a battlefield, energy costs for spells you play is reduced by 1 to a minimum of 1. So these Ride the Winds become 1, and this Console the Past becomes 3, and this Decree of the Insight would stay 1 because it can only be to a minimum of 1, but they pass their turn. It is now the Akali's turn, and they draw their next new card, which is Mournful Witness. Mournful Witness is when a combat that I was in ends, empower me. I have +2 when empowered. This is a really fascinating 2 energy 2 might unit, because A, it's a 2-drop that actually can be up to 4 might, which is insane, but the requirement of it to be at a combat, or essentially live the combat, that is the prerequisite. Not that it even is there at the battlefield, it just has to have been there during a battlefield. And it also doesn't require that you win the combat. So a way that you would really picture this as a positive is you're at this battlefield, and then let's say the Eager Apprentice moves in, and you have the Akali. Obviously, it's not your turn, so you can do this. But if you were playing green purple, or you're playing Emperor's Divide, which is green, and you pull the card back, and the combat resolves, you now get the Empower. Obviously, with combat requiring that a unit die for it to be classified as a win of combat, that's why it's really important to be mindful of what classifies a combat and when does it become a showdown. It is very fascinating how this card can be used, and we're going to see that the Inferno is going to be played to this battlefield. There's no response from the Mel because they're out of runes. And then for 2, the for 2 we're going to play the Mournful Witness to this battlefield. Because a non-unit token was played here, they get to bring a unit back to their base, which they're going to do with the Inferno. And for the last 2 runes, they're just going to hold. They're going to say, you know what, cool, we are okay. Sorry, I just realized that one of the games was still making noise. I apologize. I usually only have 1 making noise, but when you have 2, it can overlap and it's really weird. But we do have our next new card, which is Hextech Formula. This is a gear that enters exhausted, which is always really nice to note. Empower another gear. Not empower anything, it has to be gear. So it's going to be really strong into certain decks such as Ornn, because it can mean that you can get some really exciting combinations of gear that work alongside each other. but also because it's empowering and not readying, it only works with, so far, Vendetta gear, which pretty limited list if you ask me, especially since there are only 166 Vendetta cards. You can tell by the number at the bottom there. Obviously there is more, but those are the overnumbered, which are by name themselves overnumbered over the 166. For the Mel, they are going to move to their chosen battlefield, the Risen Altar, and score 2-1. There is nothing that the Akali can do because this is not at action or reaction speed, and there's no spells to be countered. They now have, while she is at a battlefield, the Gear Apprentice gives all spells cost 1 of -1 energy. That was a weird way of saying it. And we are going to bring in... We're actually going to pay 3 for a Consult the Past to draw 2 cards. Oh, we drew a Singularity and a Fallen Comet. Those are both -1 as well, which is really nice. We are going to pass. We're happy with where we are currently. And the reason for that is because we don't really want to spend either of these to... there's nothing to spend them on, but we want to hold on to a Ride the Wind to pull the Eager Apprentice away from combat if it becomes a concern, because keep in mind, Inferno is at battlefield, and we don't really want to run the risk of losing our only unit so quickly. Akali will score to 2. She has drawn her second Shuriken Flip. And for their turn, they are going to tap 4 for Kaiser, Unexhausted to battlefield. They have chosen not to do the optional accelerate cost of an additional rune and red power. And they're going to pay that red and recycle 1 in order to play out Shuriken Flip. Shuriken Flip, they will be targeting the Eager Apprentice. It is at slow speed, which means that technically action goes before it, but because the opponent is not in a showdown, it is only reaction speed cards they can respond with, which do not include any of these cards, as they are all action except for the Decree of Insight, which is only body units. This is going to stay in our hand the entire game, which is unfortunate. The Shuriken Flip will deal 2 damage to the Eager Apprentice and allows the Akali to move a unit, friendly unit, anywhere. They're going to choose to move the Kaiser to this battlefield. That Shuriken Flip will now resolve and go to trash. Keep in mind that because it has a flow cost, technically for 3 energy, 1 power, the Akali can play it from their trash. The Akali is going to pass priority over to the Mel, and they're going to, for 1 rune and a recycle, play a Ride the Wind, targeting the Eager Apprentice, aiming to bring it back to their base. I'm going to target the Mel just so you see what they want to do. And the Akali is going to, for 1 green and a recycle, defy that spell because it costs no more than 4 energy and 1 power. It is worth noting that Defy looks at the written cost, not the actual cost. So while this only cost 1, its written cost is 2. If it costs 2 power, but because of Israel Prodigy, it was only a 1 power, doesn't matter. It's what is written on the card. It can make the difference. But that will now resolve, which means the Ride the Wind will fizzle, and it is the Mel's turn still. They tap their rune, and then they actually play their second Ride the Wind with the same focus. But obviously the Akali is tapped out, which means that the Eager Apprentice does now get to move back to base. It is now the end of the showdown. Every unit heals. The Conquer triggers occur. The Akali goes up to 3 points, and the Kaiser gets a draw 1 for the Conquer. They are now tapped out completely, but they will bring back their Mournful Witness and pass the turn. It is now Mel's turn. They draw a -4 from the smoke screen, which is always nice. But they are at 5 runes, which means if they can get the Eager Apprentice to the battlefield, they can actually play out Singularity and demolish 2 of the opponent's units, which is exactly what they're going to do. They're going to move into the Star Spring and go to 2 points. Then they're going to tap all 5 runes, recycle to blue, and they're going to target the Kaiser and the Inferno. Now, why don't they target the Mournful Witness? Well, because Inferno gets +2 on attack, which means it can trade evenly. That will now resolve with the Kaiser and the Inferno dying, and the Mel will now pass turn. It is now the Akali's turn. They draw another Kaiser, which is always really nice for them to see. They're going to tap 4 to play said Kaiser, and then pay 1 green energy, recycle 1 green energy in order to play Shuriken Flip targeting the Eager Apprentice. We're seeing a repeat of exactly what just happened, which is always really unfortunate. And then they are going to move the Kaiser over to here, but there is no way for the Eager Apprentice to save themselves this time, and the Eager Apprentice will die, and obviously the Shuriken Flip will have resolved. The Kaiser gets a +1 draw, and gets a +1 point for the Conquer. They will now move their Mournful Witness over to this battlefield, and score another point for the Conquer over here. And they will pass. It is now the Mel's turn. They are not looking too good in regards to their place in the game, but that's okay. They are going to, for 2 runes, play out a Plundering Poro, and then for 2 runes, play out a Hextech Formula, comes in exhausted because it says so. And they pass. The Akali goes up to 2 points, and they're going to choose to bring back both of their units, and for 4 recycle a red, play out Jin Murderous Artist, which has the ability that says when I when I move, add 1 energy and power. That remains until the end of the turn and is floating. With their last 3 runes, they are going to choose to pass. It is now the Mel's turn. They draw an Echo Recurrent, which they can play Accelerated, which is very nice, and would pair really nicely if they could kill it to do some really fun things, but they're unfortunately not going to be able to. They move a Plundering Poro over to the Risen Altar and score 2-2, because there is nothing the Akali can do. This is a slow speed spell, and this would give them nothing, and that's a unit. Then for... Actually, they are also now really in a bad position, but it's okay. They're going to pass. It is now the Akali's turn, and they are going to choose, because they can, to tap 3, 1, 2, 3, and recycle a green, to play from the trash a Shuriken Flip, dealing 2 damage to the Plundering Poro, and being able to move a unit. The Akali cannot respond, and as such the Plundering Poro will die. Technically the Plundering Poro should have made a gold for the Mel, and so I'll just put that there now. And the Shuriken Flip will resolve with the Kaiser being moved to the Star Spring. Because they're at 7 points, they cannot conquer off a single battlefield to win. A showdown begins, and the Mel will tap 5 in order to play a Falling Comet, killing the Kaiser. This is because the priority passes during a showdown from one player to another, and then the Akali will respond by typing 2 to play a Discipline, increasing the Kaiser's might from 4 to 6, which is exactly what the Falling Comet can do, but it was a well worth attempt. Now with their last 3, they are going to move the Jin in, creating 1 floating energy and power, and go to a Conquer of 1, draw 1, and then they're going to move the Mournful Witness over here and conquer to 8. This was a really good showing of the potency of an aggressive deck with some defensive capabilities, with Defies, with Disciplines, and a really good showing of her Legend ability as well, which signature ability, which a lot of people almost wrote off quite quickly. It is now the beginning of the second round. We are not going to be sideboarding just because the decks don't have any sideboards at this moment, and we're going to see 2 new battlefields, but one is actually from Spheroforge, one is from Origins, and one is from the new Vendetta. Back alley bar, when a unit moves from here, give it +1 this turn, and Piltover Forge. While you control this battlefield, the first friendly gear activated ability played each turn costs 1 less. The Mel is going to choose to go first, and they're going to do their mulligan stage. They will do that mulligan, and the Akali will keep their hand. It is now their Mel's turn, and they play a Plundering Poro, and we see another new unit. Apprentice Mage, a 3 energy, 3 might that says empower for 2 energy. When I become empowered, predict 2. When they are empowered, also they have +1, but that is a permanent fixture. That's quite a nice card. I like that card. We will now pass. It will go to the Akali, And for 2, they will play out a Mournful Witness, which we saw plenty of last game. And they will pass. It is now the Mel's turn. They draw the Decree of Insight, which is unfortunate for them. They move over here, and they will conquer, making a gold and getting a point. We are then going to see, for 4, a Consult the Past played to draw 2, which we just see another Smokescreen and another Consult the Past brought out, and they will pass. It is now the Akali's turn. They are going to choose to go over to the back alley bar, and then for Recycle 1, they're going to bring out Jin Murderous Artist. Pretty quick, but we like it. And then they're also going to recycle a red in order to hide the Zhonya's Hourglass to this base. Now, as per usual, it is hidden, but it's okay because we know. I have just tabbed it as won't untap, so it's okay because we know it's hidden now. And they will pass. It is now the Mel's turn. They go up to 2 points. And they are going to begin by, for 1, 2, 3 and a gold, bring out an Ari Inquisitive to this battlefield, which says when I attack or defend, give an enemy unit here -2 this turn to a minimum of 1. They are now going to tap 3 more in order to play an Apprentice Mage to base. Now, it is worth noting that they could have held onto them for Ride the Wind or a Smokescreen, but they don't mind. They don't mind making the Akali work harder to kill this. They're also going to bring back the Plundering Poro, and they're going to pass. They're just saying, hey, look, go for it. I dare you to try and take this battlefield for free. And the Akali's going to go, well, cool, I go up to 2 points. And then I'm going to tap 2, recycle 2, to play a Falling Star and target the Akali, or the Ari and the Apprentice Mage. Unfortunately for the Mel in this circumstance, that's exactly what's going to happen. That will resolve with the Ari and the Apprentice Mage dying, and the Jin Murderous Artist moving to this battlefield clear as day. There is nothing the Mel can do, and the Akali will score 2-3. Now, we are going to see the Akali has 1 floating energy and 1 floating power, so they're going to tap these last 3 runes to play the Akali to base. It is now going to be the end of the Akali's turn. It is now Mel's turn. The Mel is going to choose to move the Plundering Poro to the battlefield with the Mournful Witness. And they're going to tap 2, recycle 1 to play Smokescreen, giving a unit -4 till the end of turn. The Mournful Witness will go down to 1, and they will die. However, the Akali will reveal the Zhonya's Hourglass, which means the Mournful Witness will go back to base instead of dying. But because it was it was in a combat that ended, is now empowered, which means it is now a 4-might unit, which is pretty scary, seeing as though they got away with that for free, essentially. A gold is made for the Conquer point, and they get a point for the Conquer of the back alley bar. It's also worth noting that technically the Mournful Witness will actually be a +1 this turn because of the back alley bar, but we're not going to split hairs about making sure we follow everything to the T, because that most likely won't see more play this turn. The Mel will tap 4 to draw 2 more cards. We see another Apprentice Mage come out. We see another Decree of Insight come out, which kind of hurts. And for the last 2 runes, we're just going to pass. Gives us variability on playing a Smokescreen or playing a Ride the Wind to bring the Plundering Poro back. We didn't have enough to play an Apprentice Mage or our Mel Newly Awakened, but that's okay. The Akali will go to 4 points. They draw their Shuriken Flip, and they look at that and go, I really like that card. Tap 2, recycle 1. I'm going to Shuriken Flip your Plundering Poro, and I am going to target my Akali to move to this battlefield. It is important to note that because this is one action, you must announce all parts of the action or the ability before it can resolve. You cannot decide I'm dealing 2 damage to an enemy unit and I'll decide after that who I use or who I move. The Mel in this circumstance has no reaction cards that are going to help them besides the Lunar Bloom, which they cannot afford, and the Smoke Screen, which will definitely not help them in this circumstance. So their Plundering Pyro will die. The Shuriken of Flip will resolve with the Akali silent moving to this battlefield. The Akali will actually now tap 3 Recycle 1 in order to empower their Akali legend itself. You can see with the Thunderbolt there. The Empower will allow them to now return a friendly unit from the battlefield and ready it on an exhaust. And so what they could do if they really wanted is actually move the Jin back to base with the ability of... sorry, it's not a showdown, so they can't. They can move the Jin back to base and create 1, and if it was in a showdown, they could move it and create 1 twice, meaning they have 2. But they pass. It is now the Mel's turn again. They draw a Jinx Rebel, which says when you discard 1 or more cards, ready me and give me +1 this turn. And with the addition of Lunar Bloom, with 8 of their 9 runes, they could actually get this Jinx up to a 6 might readied unit and draw 2 cards. But it's kind of risky. Yes, the Akali's out of runes, but we're looking for long-term longevity in this game, really. So for 1, 2, 3, 4, and the gold token, they're going to bring up Mel and Newly Awakened. And then for 3, they're going to empower the Mel, which means that in turn they also empower the Mel Legend, which means that they can now disempower her, exhaust her, and get a unit -2 at a battlefield this turn. But the empowering of Mel Newly Awakened means that the Mel's spells and abilities cannot be counted anymore, non-defiable. And all minus might abilities will be increased by 1. It is worth noting, at this stage, we are fairly certain that a card such as Smokescreen, which has a minimum requirement, such as in this case minimum 1, it means that that does not override, is instead as if the card had said -5 this turn instead. So that is not a feature that overrides the minimum requirement. However, we are still to be figuring it out, as because of the wording of if a spell or ability you control would give minus might to a unit it chooses, it gives an additional might. It does speak as if though it is adding might to the card, but it could also be read similar to it gives an additional -1 might to the unit that you choose. Whether that occurs before or after, we are pretty certain. Once again, it happens before the card resolves, which means that even this still applies the -1 minimum of 2 or 1. But with all that said and done, we will be passing the turn. The Akali will go to 7 to holding 2 battlefields, and they will bring both of their units back. And then they will be tapping 2 to play a Mask of Foresight to their base. Mask of Foresight, when a friendly unit attacks or defends alone, give it +1 this turn. And then for the 2 more, they're going to play an Inferno to base and pass. It is now the Mel's turn. They need to defend a battlefield, but in best interest, probably both. They will begin by moving their Mel to this battlefield and scoring 2/4. Then, because they have the available resources, they're going to tap 3 to play a Lunar Bloom, and in doing so they're going to choose to discard an Imperial Decree. Keep in mind that because the Mel has the empowered ability right now, there's nothing that the opponent can do with this, so we don't have to ask if they are okay with this. But the Imperial Decree of Insight will now be discarded, and the Mel will draw 2. They drew a new card, Shadows of the Past. Return up to 2 units from trashes to their owner's hands. The Mel has in their trash the Ahri Inquisitive, which would be very nice. They also have the Apprentice Mage and the Plundering Pyro, and the Akali has no units. So it's looking pretty good for the Mel. They're going to tap 3, recycle 1 to play Shadows of the Past, and return the Ahri and the Apprentice Mage to hand. and then they are going to tap 3, recycle 1 to play that blue Ari to this base or battlefield. And because the empowering on the Soul's Reflection, all units attacking currently will get -2, and because the empowering on this, that will actually be 3, and because if the Ari Inquisitive is attacking or defending, all units get -2 to a minimum of 1, that is actually -3 to a minimum of 1. But because you can choose the ordering, you can actually apply this first, giving a -3, and then you can apply this, giving a -3, but this one does not have a minimum power and might requirement, which means that you can do -6 beyond a minimum of 1, so long as you order it correctly. A lot of words, I know. The last thing they will do is they will tap 2 runes and recycle a purple in order to play a Ride to the Wind. They will use that on the Ari, moving it over to the back alley bar. And that means that they conquer 2/5 this turn and have an even split on defense. They are unfortunately out of runes, but at this stage of the game, you're really fighting for your life. It is now the Akali's turn. They are going to begin by kind of realizing that, yeah, that's a lot of minus might. But it's not the end of the world. They're going to begin by tapping... Well, I was not meant to recycle that one. Tapping 2 in order to play out a Zhonya's Hourglass 2 base. They will then move the... let's see. The Jin Murderous Artist to this battlefield. A move ability has occurred, which means that the Akali is now floating 1 energy and 1 power. And because this is an attack or defend, a showdown occurs. This is an innate ability, which means that the Jin immediately gets a -3. It is now a 1 might unit. The Jin now uses as a reaction. They could have used a reaction to the trigger ability of Jin Inquisitive, but there's no point at this stage. They tap 2 to play a Discipline on their Jin, which will resolve, giving him +2 might, and drawing a card. The Mel can respond with reactions, but they're not going to just at this stage. Keep in mind that this is only on your turn, because it is not an action or reaction. This is therefore going to be a trade. It is going to kill the Jin and kill the Ari, and that means that they can now move in with just the Inferno. I did actually forget about the Mask of Foresight, which actually would have meant that the Jin lived. But yeah, I forgot about it, it's okay. The Akali will now draw a card for the Conquer Point, and the Akali will move into this battlefield. Now, the Mel ability does not by itself give -1, and this cannot be played, and unfortunately for them, they have no runes, which does mean that this is going to be, with the Mask of Foresight, a 5, and because it moved, it goes up by 2 more to a 7, and because it is in a combat, it cannot be chosen by enemy spells and abilities, which would have actually made it perfect to be attacking into this Ari because it could not have been targeted. But that's once again making mistakes by playing through the new decks. Unfortunately for the Mel in this circumstance, they will be dying, and it is now a 2-0 game to the Akali. This was really fun. I had a lot of fun playing through the new cards, learning a bit more about them, and hopefully showing off a bit of that flow and power dynamic you've got going on there. There are 2 others that we didn't really get to interact with a lot, which is Burn and more Banish, but hopefully it makes a bit of sense what I was doing with the Shuriken Flip in the first game. Anyway, that is everything from me, and I will catch you guys in the next one.